Hey everybody, welcome to the Tuesday live stream. The goal today is to get to this in 15 minutes or less so we can go and shoot for Q&A. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, I just had a fantastic interview with Jem from Gem Crypto. And I got to tell you, the things that she told me, she lives in Hong Kong. She went to university at UK. But the things she told me about what people are saying in Hong Kong and China related to Trump and Venezuela blew my mind. So I'll have that interview out hopefully tomorrow and we'll see how it goes. But today, let's talk about Bitcoin and why things kind of go sideways and then plummet and go back up a little bit. But here we are today, 92.5. And then when I was putting today's show together, we actually were having a nice little pump and everybody was happy. I'm happy. I like green days. But we can see that there's been a little bit of a downturn, which is not so bad. I mean, if we zoom out, we can see that it wasn't just in December 31st, January 1st, around there, we were at 87,000. So I mean, it is what it is, but we seem to be just fighting some invisible force. And what is that? Well, Jeff Park laid it out perfectly in his post. I linked his account in the description so you can check him out and follow him over our next. Got some really good information. But Jeff, where'd he go? CIO at ProCap Bitcoin and Bitwise Invest. And he says, and he put this out pretty poignantly about what's happening behind the scenes. And we'll get into the Substack information. But he says, people think that if you are sitting on 1,000 Bitcoin, the question is whether to sell it all, partial, or keep. That's what a lot of people think about. Like, hey, I have some Bitcoin, I'm gonna sell some, take some profits, so on and so forth. But the question is really not asking that correctly. Because with modern finance, you do a whole lot of things. So these people, these OGs that are sitting on some pretty massive amounts of Bitcoin, the question is, do I earn 7 million a year safely? Do I earn 15 million a year and risk some partial sell or a sell-off? Or do I earn 30 million a year and part with my 90 million for good? Or do I sell it all? The OGs didn't one day randomly decide they want to sell it all. They got assigned. And what he is talking about is this post over on Substack. I linked Jeff's information, not the Substack article. Just follow Jeff on X and you can go from there. But he starts out by saying this, and it's pretty smart. And I agree with him here. Give me volatility or give me death. I don't know about you, but sideways days or just a little bit, a couple of grand up, a couple of grand down are boring. I miss the days when it was, yes, 10, 20, 30% drops. Those are fun. These are boring. And of course, on the flip side, I also like the massive gains that we have. So when we don't have volatility, I think this actually decreases the amount of interest by retail because they're like, you know what, this is not what I'm doing. And that's why they're going on to like, say, Polymarket or something like that to actually gamble things away. Anyhow, this is what he's talking about. He goes, the whole reason why we're not going up is related to this chart right here. And he says here, the upside volume premium is much higher for IBIT ETF than it is for native Bitcoin when you go out beyond 3+ months and increasingly pronounced in longer duration. In theory, with the same cost of capital, this spread should not be as sustainably pronounced as it is. Because as you go out, as you buy Bitcoin, there shouldn't be that much of a discrepancy between the valuation of Bitcoin and as far as like the difference in spread of what it actually is as far as the ETF. So he's asking, why is there such a difference in the valuation going out so far? And he lays out some other charts which you can take a look at, but it comes down to this. Bitcoin coin holders, that's us, maybe some OGs, maybe not, are selling volume in the open market, open interest, on the upside, much more aggressively, creating a structural downward pressure, while the IBIT holders are buying upside volume, creating a structural upward pressure. What does this sound like? It sounds like, okay, you got buyers and sellers, but just wait. Simply put, it means traditional market participants and crypto native market participants are creating divergent flows that are resulting in divergent market structures. But it gets better because these sellers and these buyers, they can do calls and puts. The Bitcoin covered call strategy in part explains the relentless continued selling from OG Bitcoiners. It's a lot easier to sell a call or a covered call than to go out there and like, I don't know, take a loan against it, hold it for another 10 years or something. And that's why I think the things that are going on behind the scenes are these people selling off or doing options. OG Bitcoiners have been more widely documented and observed. In fact, this behavior has been continuing for years before the ETF launch, before 2021, which kind of goes against the whole IPO Bitcoin movement. But that's a whole other topic for another video. Many crypto investors wrongly call out that Bitcoin ETFs are paper Bitcoin and options on Bitcoin ETFs are the culprit for muting price action. That's not true. It doesn't. ETFs, you have to back it with something, and they're going out and actively buying Bitcoin. Now, it's being stored by, say, Coinbase or by some other different storage for Bitcoin. We get that, so it's not paper Bitcoin like futures and options and things like that. This is actual real Bitcoin being bought. It's actually the reverse. Bitcoin ETFs have not only been net positive delta in the system, it has been a net Vega contributor to the market as well. It's actually the OG supply that is overwhelming on the margin, on both delta and Vega. So this is what's happening behind the scenes. All it really comes down to is this. We've got a lot of different OGs selling, or they're doing calls and options. And that's why he talks about this. They're going to make a lot of money off of doing that. And because of that, you get some of this nonsense going right here because there's market makers behind the scenes having to match everything. And I found it interesting that just yesterday, we had an inflow of 697 million across all the ETFs. Look at that. That's pretty large. How large is it? Well, like the title and thumbnail suggest, it's essentially the 7th largest daily inflow for the ETFs. The largest so far, November 7th, 2024, at 1.3 billion. Then there was this big other one called, I don't know if you heard about this date, but it was October 6th at $1.2 billion. So again, people say, well, is the ETF for retail? Yeah, it's for retail. Institutions are here as well, but I think the retail bought the top on October 6th for that 1.21 billion. That was the top for Bitcoin for this 4-year cycle. Now what's going to happen in the future, it's anybody's guess. But then, of course, today, this is the 7th largest inflow, 697 million, quite a bit of inflow going on, but it doesn't really matter because the things that are going behind the scenes, calls, puts, and sells, and there we are. So to bring this all home, from James Brent Stratton, senior analyst at CoinDesk, says Bitcoin ETFs are seeing strong inflows while CME futures open interest remains roughly 50% below its peak. The prior 100K Bitcoin unwind shows basis trades were exited. Bitcoin price continues to make higher highs without open interest rebuilding, indicating exposure is held unhedged and flows are directly long, not arbitrage driven. And if you'd like to follow the open interest to see what's happening, calls, puts, shorts, and longs, there's a website over at CoinGlass for Bitcoin open interest. And you can just see, as you scroll down here, that here's the price of Bitcoin. And then here in the yellow will be the open interest. And you can just see that as price fluctuates, so does imminent open interest. But when we decrease the interest, we get more of a bullish sign. And we can just see that it just pretty much tracks pretty much on point with the price of Bitcoin moving forward and up and down. So anyhow, let me know what you think about that in the comments section. But I would just say this. When Jeff was talking about this, about people taking profits and doing calls, puts, and those types of things, when he said that, it reminded me of why I have these rules underneath us. And the rules are very simple. I put these in 2022 after the collapse of FTX, Celsius, and Voyager. And it's very basic. It's all gone. None of us more you can afford to lose. Everything's a scam. Don't leave things in exchanges. Don't use leverage. Take profits along the way. For me, I had to look at this every single day to get it right this time. I just still didn't get it perfect. I could have done a lot better. But the taking the profits, this is why I got into the real estate industry, of which I've been doing for decades now. But it saved me a lot of heartache when I've taken the profits and diversified and put into other different asset classes. I know for some people, I don't understand. But for me, when I have the real estate, it makes a heck of a lot easier. And there's a nice little cash flow, especially if you're doing short-term or long-term rentals. Just something to think about when we get back into all-time highs and what you want to do moving forward. And that would lead me on to this piece right here, which kind of brings together why I think that retail isn't coming back, even though we've got some pretty big tailwinds. Polymarket. It turns the housing price indices into prediction markets via PARCL partnership. PARCL, which I didn't know who these guys were until I read that article. Because I thought, oh, this would be great. I'm going to be able to use crypto and get into real estate, which is like I can overlay two different things one of my favorites, but that's not really what it is. But I just found it interesting that they're going into the prediction markets through PARCL. This is how it is. So I took a look at PARCL and said, what is this? When you go through PARCL, essentially what you're able to do is you're doing open interest on real estate. You don't own the interest, or you don't own the actual real estate. You're just kind of betting, is it going to go up or is it going to go down? And because of that, this is essentially, like I said, like open interest, and you can use this. They've got a lot of data points over at PARCL, and that's what Polymarket is going to start to do. I took a look and I was like, maybe I should get into this. And I took a look at the live deal flow and how much people make. But to me, I'm like, this kind of doesn't feel like something I'd want to do. But I get why retail goes into this, why they went into other riskier aspects of the crypto space, like meme coins, like gaming, like crypto spheres and stuff like that. It's because it was like kind of like a more gambler mentality. And for that, when I took a look at this, I'm like, I don't have the underlying asset. I'm not a big fan of that. But you can do it. And then if you take a look at PARCL, the price per token today, it's up almost 35%. But if you max out over a year, you can see where things were going. But when I took a look at that and Polymarket, this is why retail doesn't want to come back. Because they'd rather gamble and do things like my friend Bobby here. And he will gamble on all different types of things. I think Polymarket, their strength is being able to take a look at where things are going. And they did a great job with the presidential election for sure. But when I take a look at this, this kind of navigates just one more indicator of where things are going. Will the price of Bitcoin hit in January? This doesn't have much volume. You can just, let's see, will the price of XRP hit? Ooh, let's see. Uh-huh. 38% say 260. That's pretty high. And then we got 6%. And you can just kind of go through this and just kind of look at where things are going. Again, another indicator to take a look at. One thing I'm not a fan of being an American is that I can't trade on Polymarket because it is not available to me. I'm in view-only mode. But again, when I take a look at this, they were right on the Fed cuts. They were right on politics. And they were right on, actually, also what they were right on was the extraction of Presidente Maduro. Somebody put a bet on that one like a couple hours before it was announced. So if you think there's no insider information going on, maybe you should take a look at Polymarket. Go from there. And lastly, before we get out of here, I would like to say thanks for everybody for contributing to the 12 Days of Christmas. And if you don't think that there's a lot of bots and fake on-chain analysis and stuff like that, when we did this giveaway yesterday for the BNB token, I put it out there about 30 minutes ago, or 30 minutes before the live stream. I said, hey, if you'd like to sign up and win some free BNB, just go on this link. And I gave the link and people filled it out. So I'd like to extend my warm wishes to the 1,000 people who signed up, which seems about reasonable, but also the other 90,000 bots that signed up for this and gave me all their addresses, which is probably controlled by one. I can't go that fast. Let's go to the bottom. This is in 20 minutes. Oh, now it's at 100,000. I apologize. So congratulations to the winners. And that's what's going on in the markets. And that's it for today. So look, if you like today's video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. What we talk about is time sensitive. Now let's get into a little Q&A. Answer all your questions to the best of my abilities, and we will go from there. Let's see what we have today. 9790K. Sure, I can see that. You know what I'd like to see, though? Let's see here. Let's take a look at the moving averages, see how things are going. So let's see, what is this? 200, which is a good one to take a look at. $50, $100, $150, and $20. Oh, it'd be nice to get the 20. So to go to 90K, well, you'd have to bounce off this support, as the TA people tell me, at 101K. Oh, that's not right. Excuse me, 86K, 86.4. So yeah, I could see a 90K bouncing off, because it seems like we're just kind of skimming along for this 100-week moving average. Now, like we talked about before, when it gets down to this level, this 200-week moving average, which historically speaking, let me refresh this, is usually the lowest of the low. Remember that thing called coronavirus? That's when it dropped to the floor. Imagine buying Bitcoin at 3,800. I remember, I bought some. Wasn't a lot though, messed that up. How about buying Bitcoin at 19,000, 20,000, 22, we're at 23, 19,000, 23. Yeah, I'd like to do this too. So yeah, take a look at that 200-week, because if we start to go down to there, that'd be a good buying opportunity. Not financial advice, just looking at some averages, which is one of my new favorite toys to look at. All right. What'd I miss? Let's go up here. Nice. I use Substack for military information. I'm sure there's a lot of different information you can find on that one. Well, Bunko, down you can see. Gold is also a good investment. Nothing wrong with that. I own both. Works out pretty well for me. I've got, well, crypto, real estate, stocks, precious metals. I don't see the problem with those. I don't know why people are so adamant that you have to only carry one. And let's see, Jupiter Mojo asking about a VPN for Polymarket. I don't know anything about that. Can't say anything about that, because that would be against their terms of services. And that is not what we're about here, to say those things. Did I miss the BNB? No, we gave $500 away yesterday, but I guess you missed the yesterday stream. But don't worry about it. We'll have another one in 12 more months. Ard says, Rob, do you still have Toncoin? Unfortunately, yes, I do. And I think it's down pretty massively. Let's take a look. Let's see. Oh, this is another one I'd rather talk about. Looks like the Department of Justice just sold a bunch of, not just, but recently sold Bitcoin, which is what they had confiscated from the guys over at, what is it, Samurai? Yeah. The Samurai delves Bitcoin. Oh, Natalie Brunel. This is Kenny Rodriguez. He's in jail right now for creating an app, which I think is ridiculous. We covered this a couple of weeks ago. And it looks like they confiscated this gentleman and his partner's Bitcoin, and they sold it off in December, so just a month ago, which goes directly against what President Trump was saying, which was to not sell the Bitcoin. It's supposed to go to the strategic reserve. Huh. Anyhow, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, Toncoin. That was much more interesting than Toncoin, I'll tell you that. Let's see. Toncoin, which, you know, if you go on Telegram and you take a look at how many users they have, you know, Telegram has roughly 1 billion users. You know, roughly is like an 8-point-something billion, 8.2, 8.3 billion people in the world. And they have 1 billion users. And they have a coin essentially made straight for Telegram. And this is as high as they can get, $1.87 after a year. Now, if we take a look at Max, it used to be $7 in 2024, for Pete's sakes. Now we're down to this one. So yes, I still own it. Should have dumped it a long time. Made a mistake. Need to review my own rules. You're right. Ed, reach out to me personally. Going to do PR meetups. Going to be there in February. I don't usually announce the meetups anymore, especially with all the wrench attacks. So, I mean, like, I like wrenches. I mean, they are functional. I just don't like when they're swinging at my head trying to steal my crypto. So try to avoid those as much as possible. But yeah, when you're in, reach out. We'll get together. Only about $7. Donna says, what do you think the cycle ends without the pi cycle top? I think that there's a lot of people that state that if we increase the liquidity, if we get the regulation to close with the Clarity Act here in 2026, if we get the institutions to keep buying, which looks like they are, and again, if we have liquidity, which I find it odd that we have 130 trillion sloshing around for the M2 global money supply, and the United States has 22.4 trillion, yet for some reason just can't seem to stick into our sector, Bitcoin and digital assets. Yet it has no problem falling into gold and silver and precious metals, which I understand why, especially with the AI argument. So to say it like this, I am hopefully optimistic about 2026. I am short-term bearish, like we talked about, but I continued to buy Bitcoin every single day. Because one of my screw-ups back in 2022 was putting my foot off the gas when there was some really great discounts to be had. I was buying, but not as much as I should. And now I think it's the same thing again. So I just continue to buy. And as the risk metrics fluctuate and it becomes less risky because the price decreases, I double, triple, quadruple my buys every single day. Marty says, Robert, you're only buying best. Yeah, but those are a little bit segmented. And what Marty is talking about, of course, is Binance, Ethereum, Solana, and Tron. Although I had somebody yesterday in the chats, which I read all the chats, which is always fun, who said that he has to unsubscribe from me because he cannot believe that I would promote Solana and Tron and BNB. Didn't say anything about Ethereum though, but he said because they're so centralized, and of course the goal is to get decentralized as possible to avoid single points of failure and of course government control. And I was like, that's true. That's why 80% of my portfolio is Bitcoin. But guess what? I got to pay the bills. And guess what? People are going to start using, well, they're already using Ethereum. They're using a lot of Solana. Actually, Solana is the number 2 as far as volume and exchanges. It's 1.5 trillion, I think, volume for the last year. And the only one that beats it is Binance. It's actually beating Coinbase. So when I take a look at that, I'm like, I'm not here to change the world. Sorry. I'm here to change my wallet. And that's what I'm doing. So you can unsubscribe from me. That's fine. But these are the things that I have to look out for me and my family. But 80% is in Bitcoin. So just letting you know. Oh, why do I say these things? Just going to get more people unsubscribing. That's okay. AOC and Walls for 2028. Dream ticket. Kraken and AOC 2028. That'd be a good one. Impeach the Supreme Court. Oh. I get my first Social Security check this month. Will not need to use my investments to day-to-day bills now. Very nice. Congratulations, you earned it. Okay, Ian says, Sol's up 6,000% over the last 5 years. That guy doesn't understand anything. I think it's people look at this and they come in the narrative of like, it's got to be super decentralized and it has to be for the people. And that is true. It's great to do that. But like, look, how many different projects said that and don't appreciate. And then that leads out for people to not have any type of revenue, not to have any gains. I mean, we're only here for so long. We're in a finite amount of time, right? And for some people, it'd be great if they could, pay the bills and live a sweet life instead of having a soul-sucking job in some cubicle that you're at. Maybe you'd like to actually take some profits. So there's no profits there if you're getting dumped on by the very foundation that you invested your hard-earned money into for all these digital assets, and they didn't do their job. They made a great pitch to you and said how great they're going to be. They didn't do squat, or they mismanaged, which is what most of the businesses do out there. And I know people say that's not a business. It is a business. If you're really that decentralized, which a lot of them aren't, just take a look. Do you have a founder? You have a CEO? Probably not that decentralized. I'm just going to break it to you. I don't think that I can go to the CEO foundation of Satoshi and say, hey, I'd like you to do this for this reason. I'm just saying. Okay. The point of investing is to become wealthy. Right. Constant improvement for you, your family, and your loved ones, and the people around you, right? That's the big thing. He played a video of saying people cheering in Venezuela. Look, on X, when I first heard about the Venezuela arrangement, what was happening, and Maduro got picked up, and now I think he's in New York court being arraigned. I was like, what the heck are we doing? But then I took a look and I just asked the question. I'm like, I don't know anything. I'm not a Venezuelan. I don't have any friends in Venezuela. I don't have any family. So I just asked the question, like, if you're from Venezuela, or you have family in Venezuela or friends of Venezuela, tell me, is this a good or bad thing? And every single person was like, this is the greatest thing that's happened in the last 27 years for Venezuela. And I'm like, great. I don't know what's going to happen afterwards, but it seems like this is a great thing for what's going on for Venezuelans and hopefully the region. We'll see. Is Tomato Coin decentralized? Absolutely not. Tomato Coin is right now sitting in my back pocket. That's it. Tomato Coin was a meme coin that I introduced on Cardano. And it was one of the first meme coins ever minted on Cardano. And what I did was, I minted this a long time ago, and I just gave them to all our delegates for our Cardano stake pool. And it was just for fun. We didn't really think too much of it. Then the meme coin craze came, and I said, hey, maybe we'd want to trade this. So I put my Tomato Coin, I put everything up to fund it. And what happened? Everybody dumped their Tomato Coin on me, which I have to tell you was a pretty fair thing to say, because I'm always telling people I'm going to dump on them, and they dumped it on me. So I did this to kind of kickstart Cardano, to help Cardano, and like put out a meme coin that I think would be popular with people that are in Cardano. And here we are. So yeah. Yeah, Brian's got a point. I remember the videos of the Iraqis cheering, giving our troops flowers. Yeah, let's see what happens. I will say this, I'm very happy that there was no deaths for the American military personnel, which I served 8 years. So I'm very happy with that. Iraq, how many decades were we there? Venezuela's situation will be great if the US doesn't put boots in the ground. That's very true, Jimmy, very true. Solstice says, we're getting into geopolitical. I just try to keep it light. I always fail. Yeah. Mary says, hey, good for Venezuela. You know what? Let's just leave it there. Good for Venezuelan citizens if it improves their quality of life. That's true. And from what I gathered from everybody from Venezuela, it was extreme poverty, couldn't get enough to eat, starvation, massive inflation. Couldn't get out of it. There was a massive migration. I think there's like roughly 29 million Venezuelans. Over the last decade or so, they've lost 9 million of those to the current level of 29 million. And they've just essentially moved out. So if that works out for them, this is great. And I take a look at it and go, man, imagine if you had put your hard-earned life savings into the currency of Venezuela, and it just gets inflated away. And that's why we Bitcoin, because that happened in Venezuela, Greece. It can happen essentially any place, Zimbabwe. And it could happen to the American dollar too. So this is why I diversify into Bitcoin. And as long as the government keeps debasing the currency, and that'd be the US government, I will keep buying Bitcoin. That's it for today. So look, like today's video, thumbs up, subscribe. I'll have that interview with me and Jem from Hong Kong. Fascinating. Out tomorrow. So that's it. Thanks so much, everybody. See you in the next one. Adios.